All right, man. Will, we are back on another episode of the Oracle Insurance Podcast, man.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm going to say this every single time, but I'm genuinely excited to sit down and talk about this today. My name is Luke Rouse. For those of y'all that don't know me, I'm sitting here with the CEO of Oracle Insurance, Will Stephanie. And today, I'm just elated, man. We talked last week about the 5 things that you wish you knew when you started your business. Mm-hmm. That was phenomenal. Check that out if you haven't seen it yet. But also what we're talking about today is something I'm super passionate about. I know you're super passionate about. We're talking about leadership, and we're talking about it in the context of business, in the home life, and all of those different things. So there are so many ways that we could go to start this off here, man. But I'm just going to talk to you first about share with me a little bit about how you've grown in your leadership since becoming a business owner, because we talked about on our first episode how you weren't always a business owner, right? You kind of worked for different companies and different things like that, but I'm sure leadership in some context has been a big part of your life. So talk to me about how you've grown. Was it easier or harder to manage people and be a leader in that way than you thought it was going to be?
Oh, yeah, man. Yeah, it's definitely something I've grown into for sure, man. It's, as being a leader, man, you got to be, the one thing I've learned is like humility, being humble, and also, man, you got to let things bounce off of you because you're going to make a lot of mistakes. And leading people, man, you got to help them get through their things. And so you can't take stuff personally. You just got to, man, you got to be the one that can push through that stuff, and that's something that I've had to truly learn over the years. And you start looking back as you get into business and and you start getting older, like I am, and you start looking back through all the years and all the little things and all the people that have like impacted you, and taught you leadership skills. I mean, like one of the guys that taught me a ton was my old football coach back in Harlan, Iowa. Man, I was pretty shy, pretty unconfident if I was a leader or not, and he kind of forced me into that role because he saw something in me that I didn't see.
Wow.
And you start seeing that throughout your history on how to lead and how to just really get people motivated. Also, you got to step out into those uncomfortable situations if you're going to be a leader, because somebody's got to do it first. And even sometimes you're not confident, but you're like, man, somebody's got to do it. So that it can be tough at times, but it's been fun. It's been truly just a learning experience from start to finish. And there's just so many people that you can turn to for leadership. There's so many great leaders out there, like Craig Rochelle, and just like authors like that you can turn to that give you just great knowledge on things that you got to dig into. And that was one thing in early starting out. I didn't read a lot of books and all that stuff. I was like, nah, I got it. And as I went through my history of leading, that's where as you get older, you start realizing, man, you can't do it on your own. You got to have a strong purpose, and you got to have, more support and more people to turn to help you in those things, because trying to do it on your own, man, it's a heavy load to carry. And it can not only, emotionally be draining, but physically be draining, trying to carry that load all by yourself if you're trying to do it all on your own. So that's why having a great team around you that you can depend on fill all your weaknesses with, and they can take those on, and you can just truly focus on what you're good at. So it's huge to have a great team around you.
Yeah, that's so good. Would you say, I don't think you would say it was easier than you thought it was going to be, right? Being a leader in a way, I'm sure you would agree, it was probably a little bit harder. So there's 2 phrases that I love, right? One of them is when the leader gets better, everyone gets better. Mm-hmm. And another one that a lot of folks say at our church, or the pastors say, and I think Craig said it as well, which is so great. He's a phenomenal leader, that you can have comfort or growth, but you can't have both, right?
Totally.
And that's a big part of leadership. And so I want to ask you, what's the biggest lesson that you feel like you've learned? Because everything is about growth. So throughout your journey of being a leader in the different capacities, what's the one biggest lesson that you've learned through that 20, 30, 40 years of that?
Yeah, that's where I probably go back to, man, you can't do it on your own. You have to have people behind you, and you have to have for me, just really to be honest, when I say people, I mean God is the reason that I think I'm at the best place I've ever been in leadership, just because, throughout my years, when I started business, it was because I wanted to prove to myself and everybody else, man, that I was the guy, that I could do it. And I was doing it for all the wrong reasons. I was doing it for either was money or pride or, just cockiness or arrogance, that you want to be like, yeah, look at me, look at me. And that was, early in my career of being a business owner. But as trial and tribulations happen, you start realizing like, man, I don't got this. I'm screwing this up. I'm messing up here and there. And so, man, it was about, almost 3 years ago to the day. It'll be 3 years ago this Saturday.
Wow.
I was just struggling on how to lead because, with the world telling you this is what a man's supposed to do, and just all the madness in the world on trying to lead a family and a business through a pretty, crazy time during like the COVID and also like all the political stuff that was going on.
Yeah.
You're trying to wonder like who is right in all this and what is the truth, right?
Wow.
And 3 years ago this Saturday, I walked into a men's group and opened up the book of Timothy, and Jesus just laid out, here's what it is to be a man of God. And I read that and I walked out of that place just bawling because I was like, man, that's the answer to everything. And really is that God created us with the Holy Spirit inside of us, that we can do anything, that we can be confident in what we do. And walking out of there that day, I just, after reading the book of Timothy, he laid out, here's what it means to be a man of God. You got to, lead by example. You got to be walking. That's one of our core values, is lead by how you live. If you're living like a sinner, you can't lead that way, right? So that was probably the biggest thing for me, just walking out of there, just like, okay, now I got the answers. Now I know the truth. Now walking that out, hasn't been easy. It's been a changing thing for me, but now I can have confidence as long as I'm doing it His way. I know it's the right way. And that's, just loving people. That's probably the biggest thing in leadership is like, if you're doing your business for your own good, it's hard for people to follow you. But if you're doing your business because like everybody here, I want them to be successful, them to be happy, and if they're successful, they're happy, our business is going to be successful.
Wow,
so
that's great.
Changing the focus to others instead of yourself, just like in life in general, right? You can't lead a family if you're just doing it for you. You got to raise kids. We got your wife, you got to treat like a queen all the time, just like Jesus loved the church. So that change in focus has probably been the biggest thing for me. And, I even got one guy that used to work with us, and that's, me and him always butted heads because I was, doing it for my purpose. And I didn't lift him up enough. And, he's even came to me afterwards and said, man, you're a way different person.
Wow.
Well, now that I got, God leading me, that's what changed everything for me,
Yeah. Talk a little bit about, I'm interested to know, it's so funny, and I love that you do this, because I'm throwing you a little bit of a curveball here, but I know you're ready for it. I was just at lunch with a buddy of mine earlier today, and he was asking me about this job, and because I haven't talked a ton to people about it and different things, and so he was talking to me about it, and I said, I met with a couple different people when I was looking for work months ago, and he said, what was different about Will when you sat down with him? And I said, one, we just clicked and hit it off. Like, we've known of each other. We really just hit it off, and we're like, I think we could mutually benefit each other and work really well together. But another thing that I loved was the working genius, man. So as a leader, talk more about how in your hiring process that you've worked to not just find people to fulfill what you need, but find if it's a good fit with someone's personality and the things that they're able to do well, if it's going to pair well with your business rather than the other way around. Talk some about how you've implemented Working Genius and what the difference has been of doing that or not doing it.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you brought that up, because Working Genius, if you haven't checked it out, man, you got to. It's awesome, because once, so Working Genius there's really 6 buckets, and everybody has 2 working geniuses that when they're in that, they're thriving. And then there's 2 working geniuses that when you're working in that, you can do it, but it's nothing you love. And then there's two that you can't stand.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of people, when they're in business, and especially if you're a small business owner and getting started, you kind of have to wear all 6 hats.
Yeah.
And that can be draining. But once you can get a team around you, and if you're doing it with Working Genius and, okay, here's what I got, here's the job description that I need to fill, what kind of Working Geniuses are that? Because so I'm Wonder and Invention.
Yeah, talk maybe a little bit for people that might not know about the different, not all of them, but just a couple.
Yeah. So
categories.
I'm Wonder and Invention, and usually, the creator of a business usually has either one of those. Wonder is just when you're like, hey, you start thinking of something like, hey, how can this be done better?
Yeah.
And then the invention part is, okay, I'm going to create something to make it better. Or so first somebody's got to ask the question. That's the wonder. And then invention is the guy that's like, hey, I'm going to create that. Well, I have both of those. So I'm always at 30,000 feet, I think. And, if you looked at all the things I've created, I've created a billion things. The problem is I don't have tenacity, which tenacity is that person that pushes over the finish line.
Yeah.
So I'm not, like when I go squirrel, like you get distracted because you see something else. So that's me.
Yeah.
I love creating stuff. I do a lot of woodworking stuff on the side because I like just building stuff, but I have a lot of stuff that's unfinished. So on your team, I know I have to make sure that I have people that want to push stuff over the finish line and people that want to dig in and work.
Yeah.
So really knowing who you are and who the rest of your team is, because if all of us here at Oracle, we're all WIs,
right,
we would never get anything done.
Yeah.
We would just keep creating stuff and it'd just be absolute chaos. If you asked everybody here, I cause a lot of chaos. But us, luckily, now we've done Working Genius, we all know that's who I am. So they'll even tell me sometimes hey, Will, that's not your deal. Don't do that. We'll do that. So that's been huge. So it's just kind of like a personality test, but it's more geared towards that of making sure that you got the right person in the right seat. And that's been huge. It's been fun because it's kind of interesting because you'll start talking to somebody and then you'll just be even with you, when we started talking, I'm like, I bet I know what he is, and it was pretty much right on.
Yeah.
Because what were you remember what yours were?
Oh gosh, I'm trying to. Do you know all the 6 of them off the top of your head? Because I know it wasn't Wonder and Invention. I don't think.
You were tenacity. And galvanizing, which you're totally galvanizing. Yeah,
that makes sense. I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Super hype.
Which is what I love.
Yelling at people.
Yeah,
let's go, baby.
Yeah, but you just get people excited. That's what's awesome.
Yeah, I try.
Yeah, you do great, dude.
No, that's so good. So even as it pertains to leadership, I think the key of what you're talking about there is not just finding people who serve you well, but seeing the good in other people, right? Seeing what the strengths are of other people and not just how it can apply to your weaknesses and what you need. That's part of it, but you're really looking at how do I make sure that this person, as I'm a leader of them in business or whatever other facet, that they can be most benefited, that they're thriving wherever they're serving, however they're working for or with me. And I think that's a really important part of leadership. So just switching gears slightly to the idea of somewhat of that concept, but what is something as a leader, I think this is for a lot of people, even for myself, younger people, whoever it is, what do you look for if you go to hire somebody, right? Maybe obviously there's some key or normal things that a lot, you know what I mean? Hard work and someone who's joyful and not complaining and all those things. Right. So I'm sure those are part of it, but is there anything maybe a little different, or talk to me about what you look for, what someone is like, hey, I should strive to not fakely, that's not a word, but I don't know, you know what I mean? Not fake to be something they're not, but hey, I should work on these areas because these are something that someone like a CEO is looking to hire for. What are some of those things? Yeah,
I mean, I think, Working Genius comes into play of that. You want to make sure that you're bringing somebody in to a position that they're going to thrive at. And if their Working Genius doesn't align with what they're going to be good at, you're just setting them up for failure. So I think really recognizing, where they're at and their working genius. That helps a ton, which is why it's been so big for us. I think another thing is just, what's their passion in? What kind of work do they enjoy? So I think, just asking them what they've done in the past and what they really like to do, what's their dream job. And then, if that's the position that fits them, just really trying to find out, instead of just trying to plug somebody into something, a square peg into a round hole or whatever, that's never going to work. So really trying to make sure that they're going to fit first, the culture, first of all, and then fit the position. And that's one thing that for us has been huge, is really knowing what our culture is for, probably the first, up till about 4 years ago, we really didn't truly know what our core values were as a company. And that always kind of led, our culture was kind of just like kind of floating just because everybody didn't fit what our core values were. So, now that we have our core values, fellowship focus, we really want to get to know our teammates and all the clients that we work with and really truly have a relationship with them. We have to have a unified team because we have to be unified for a vision. So we're all rowing the boat in the same direction, and then be a light in the community. That's a huge thing for us, is that we're out in the community, making the community better, and just leading by how you live. So, man, if you're not walking it out, you can't expect people to follow you. So we really want to make sure that we are all, doing our best to do the best every day, so people will follow us in the battle. And as a leader of the corporation, it's a lot of stress to do that, but that's it's what we've been charged with. So really walking that out and then hiring to that. If somebody's not going to fit your core values, it's going to almost be like a virus in your organization. So, it's just got to really fit. And the biggest thing is that you just got to, it's one thing I'm trying to get better as, is just, really talking about those more and more and more. That's one thing. I love church, PT. Pastor Todd is such a great leader. That's just something that he's embedded, to where how many of us can just recite, the 5 keys, all that stuff, the game plan, everything. It's just so cool to see that. And I've been blessed, we did that group in the morning at Hy-Vee, having some breakfast and getting into certain study books and stuff like that, and just being able to hang around Pastor Todd's been huge. Like he's been a huge leader that's influenced me so much. So it's been awesome.
Yeah, that's great. So I mean, maybe he's on your list, but one of the last couple things I wanted to touch on here for anybody else as well, but who are maybe 2 to 3 leaders that you really look up to and why?
Yeah, Pastor Todd's definitely one of them. Yeah. He's taught me a lot. We use Traction here at Oracle, which is an operating system for how you operate your business. Pastor Todd has been very influential, showing the success that they've had at Love Church with that, just to have organization and how you run it. So that's something that I've leaned on him a lot, and just how just to watch him, if you ever, get out with him, and just to see how he interacts with people and really tries to get to know with people. I've always been fairly shy, and to see how he just, gets to know people when you're going out to eat with him, and he always asks their name, the server, and then, hey, tell me about yourself, and you just get him talking. And that's one thing that I've always been working on since I've been hanging on with him, just because he's just shows you, he leads by how he lives. It's awesome. Craig Rochelle, we've been quoting him a little bit already. He's just such a dynamic leader, and going to the Global Leadership Conference, and he kind of is always a keynote speaker there. It's just awesome to go there and just hear all these people just give you little tidbits on what it is to be a great leader of an organization, and just always continue to strive to be that. And then, like I said, coming from Harlan, Iowa, kind of a football powerhouse in Iowa, my coach, I was, a defensive player. My defensive coach was just such a great guy. And one of the things out of Proverbs, it says to not discipline your children is not to love your children. He always said, hey, the day I quit yelling at you is the day I gave up on you. And you could tell the dude loved you.
Wow.
But I could tell he definitely definitely never gave up on me because he always yelled at me.
He was always yelling
he never
something.
stopped. But
that's awesome.
But I mean, we're it's still every time we see each other, man, we're just like we can't stop talking to each other and just still text back and forth with him all the time. But
Wow.
he's the one that kind of forced me in. He saw something in me that I didn't know I had.
Yeah.
And one day he just called and said, "Hey man, Will, you're leading practice today." And I was like, "What?" And started doing it, and I started to realize, okay, people will follow me if I put the effort in, and if I'm somebody they want to follow. So so those three are just kind of popped to mind. But there's so many, great. I used to waste time. I wouldn't say waste time, but I used to spend a lot of time, watching TV, doing that kind of stuff. And now I just can't stop. There's so many great authors out there. Patrick Lencioni, who did Working Genius, and he's got 1 million books. And just all kinds of guys out there. John Maxwell. That instead of wasting time on watching Ozarks, that's not going to make me a better person. It may be entertaining, but spend more time on that. Watching Skip Heitzig from Calvary Albuquerque and just stuff like that. That's gonna what instead of like here's one thing. If you watch there's a book James Clear. Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
Dude, that's such a good book.
Yeah.
And one thing he talks about is, you always got to think about stuff that you're doing today. Is that going to make me the person I want to be 5 years down the road?
Wow.
Is that the person that I want to be in 6 months from now? So when you start thinking that way, you start, realizing like, okay, this isn't what I want to be. This isn't going to help me be who I am in 5 years. So why am I doing it right now?
Wow.
And there's still a billion things I'm trying to clean up, but it's just, it's, those are the things I think as a leader that, like I said, I never used to do that, but I never was a leader that I am today. And like I said, still got a lot to go.
Yeah.
But all that stuff's been huge.
Finish off real quick, and we'll hopefully try and get this in. So if we need to go longer, we can. But I think this is so big. Talk to me about the difference in leading in your business and leading in your home life, the thing that made that the biggest difference. If there were things that worked well with your employees, that didn't work as well with your wife or kids, talk to me about the dichotomy of being a leader, a successful one at that, in your business and in your home life.
Yeah. I think for a lot of people it is different, and for me it was vastly different as well.
Yeah.
But I think it shouldn't be. I think if you're doing it the right way, it should be the same. You got to lead with love, first of all, right? And I think one thing that I made a mistake a ton of is, you get to work and you smile, you treat everybody awesome, even though you may be like raging inside. And then what most of us do is we take it out on our loved ones.
Wow.
And I don't mean like you get home and you start smacking people around. But you'd get home and be crabby.
Yeah.
And because of what happened at work, but at work you can't treat people like that. But you get home and you maybe be crabby to your wife because she can't run away. We're married. Or you're just grumpy to the kids. And I think with that's where my faith has came in so strong to where I have an inner peace now that I know that long-term goals, just to get to heaven. It's not it's these short-term goals that we have here on earth. So I think just having that same love for everybody here, and then making sure when I go home, because most important, you're very important to me, but my wife is who I promised to God that I'm going to take care of the rest of my life, and then my kids are the next generation that we got to truly pour into. But if you have that same perspective in everybody you interact with, I mean, geez, just imagine if the world was like everybody treated everybody like their favorite person in the world. Man. This world would be a way better place, right?
Yeah.
So that's probably been the biggest thing for me on merging those together, just to make sure that again, you got to treat everybody with love and respect, and just hear people out. And and if people come to you, like I said, you got to let stuff bounce off of you. If people come to you with a storm raging inside of them, you can't take it personally. You just got to help them calm their storm, and then you give them some peace and just let them get it out on you. It's not personal. So
awesome, man.
Yeah.
Good stuff already. Wrapped up pretty quick as well, but leadership is just so important. So thank you for being a phenomenal leader for your business, for us here, for your family. It really means a a great deal to all of those people, right? Leadership is so big. When the leader gets better, everyone gets better, right? Yeah. So thanks for sitting down and talking about some of that, man. Rewind it if you have to. Listen to that again. There's some great keys in here, great people to study leadership from as well, and then points of just to remind yourself of, man, what am I doing today that's going to make me the person that I want to continue to become in the future, right? So thank you so much for sitting down with me again, Will, and talking about all this, and we'll do it again next week.
Sounds good.
Let's go.